For centuries, she sat in silent majesty over the Pacific Northwest. They called her the Fujiyama of America because of her perfect, symmetrical cone, draped in a gown of eternal snow. Mount St. Helens was not just a mountain, she was a jewel of Washington state. Hikers wandered her trails, and fishermen cast their lines into the crystal-clear waters of Spirit Lake, which mirrored the peak like a looking glass. To the locals, the mountain was a constant, a benevolent neighbor, but geology is a patient assassin. Beneath that serene white coat, deep inside the magma chamber, pressure had been building for 123 years. The mountain was not sleeping, it was holding its breath. And on a spring morning in 1980, it finally exhaled. Spring 1980 arrived with a warning. Small earthquakes began to shake the foundation. Steam vented from the summit, turning the snow gray. But the most terrifying sign was the bulge. On the north face of the mountain, a massive tumor of rock and ice was growing. Magma was pushing up, deforming the mountain at a rate of 5 feet per day. Scientists like David Johnston, a 30-year-old volcanologist, camped on the ridges, watching the beast transform. They knew an eruption was inevitable, but they didn't know the scale. They drew exclusion zones. They evacuated residents. But some, like Harry Truman, the stubborn 83-year-old owner of the Mount St. Helens Lodge, refused to leave. "This mountain is part of me," he said. "If she goes, I go." By mid-May, the activity seemed to calm down. The earthquake slowed. It was a deception. The mountain was simply fully loaded. May 18, 1980, a Sunday morning. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The air was crisp. It was, by all accounts, a perfect day. At 8:32 a.m., a magnitude 5.1 earthquake struck directly beneath the north slope. It was the trigger. In seconds, the entire north face of the mountain, one of the largest landslides in recorded history, collapsed. Without the weight of the rock to hold it back, the pressurized magma inside exploded. But it didn't shoot up, it shot out. A lateral blast, moving at supersonic speeds of 300 miles per hour, tore across the landscape. It leveled 230 square miles of forest in minutes. Massive fir trees were snapped like matchsticks. The heat, reaching 660 degrees Fahrenheit, vaporized everything in its path. David Johnston, stationed on a ridge 6 miles away, had time for only one radio transmission. "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." Then, silence. While the immediate blast zone was a scene of violent destruction, a different kind of horror was spreading east. The volcano pumped 520 million tons of ash into the atmosphere. The column rose 80.000 feet, piercing the stratosphere, spreading like a black bruise across the sky. Downwind, in cities like Yakima and Ritzville, the sun simply vanished. It was noon, but it looked like midnight. Streetlights flickered on, birds stopped singing and fell silent. Automatic sensors confused the darkness for night. But this wasn't just darkness, it was a physical assault. The ash began to fall, not like snow, soft and cold, but like gray, hot grit. It was pulverized rock and glass. It smelled of sulfur and old pennies. It hissed as it hit the ground. The ashfall was relentless. In Yakima, it piled up to 5 inches deep. It choked engines, clogging air filters instantly. Cars stalled on the highways, stranding thousands in an apocalyptic twilight. The psychological impact was profound. People felt trapped. They couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of them. The air was thick and abrasive, scratching the throat and burning the eyes. Hospitals filled with people suffering from respiratory distress. It was a claustrophobic nightmare. "Is this the end of the world?" children asked their parents. And looking out at the monochromatic, gray landscape, where all color had been erased, it was hard to say no. This gray shroud didn't just stay in Washington. It traveled across the United States in 3 days and circled the globe in 15. Mount St. Helens had touched the world. When the ash finally settled and the rescuers could enter the red zone, the scale of the tragedy became clear. 57 people lost their lives. Among them was Harry Truman, buried under hundreds of feet of debris in his lodge, forever one with his mountain. There was Reed Blackburn, a photographer for National Geographic, found in his car, camera still protecting his film. And David Johnston, the first to call out the warning. was never found. Only his trailer remains were located. The landscape they left behind was unrecognizable. It was a moonscape on Earth. The lush green forests were gone, replaced by a gray wasteland of pumice and ash. The Spirit Lake was a graveyard of floating logs. The silence was deafening. No birds, no insects, no wind in the trees because there were no trees left. Destruction, however, is often the prelude to creation. Just a year later, amidst the sterile gray ash, a single purple lupine flower was found blooming. It was the first sign of life returning. Nature, with its infinite resilience, began to heal the wound. Today, Mount St. Helens stands not as a perfect cone, but as a horseshoe-shaped amphitheater, a broken monument to its own power. The forest has returned, younger and wilder. The elk graze where the ash once burned. The disaster of 1980 taught scientists invaluable lessons about lateral blasts and pyroclastic flows, saving countless lives in future eruptions around the world. The mountain took much that day, but it also gave something back, a reminder of our fragility and the terrifying, beautiful power of the planet we call home.